Right. So in our Discord group, I dropped a poll where we could vote on which particular tax we should provide a solution with, because the truth is that I cannot give solution to all the tax. Right. I still feel uncomfortable even giving this solution, because there are people that I will still submit after this video. So what the best I could do is to maybe pick few tax and then just give the solution, and not the entire tax, and not the entire thing. So let's um, right. So from what we picked in our previous in the on the pool for tax one, we all voted that I should provide solution for question one of tax one. So this I believe this is the question that was given. This is the question that was given in our first professional tax student grade evaluator, right? Where we can collect grades for multiple students, and then we simply ask their scores for three subjects, and then we convert it to float, and then we calculate the average, as well as display the results. So, but then the results should be displayed in many ways, right? Where where we can simply keep count of how many students actually passed, how many failed, and how many got excellent. And to have excellence, you have to have 80 and above, with 80 inclusive. And to have pass, you have to sit somewhere between 50 and 79, both inclusive. And anything below 40, below 50 is fail. That was basically the task that we were given. Right. So we'll kickstart with the solution. Please confirm that you guys are also hearing me, because I'm having double mind that you guys are not hearing me. Can you? I believe you guys are hearing me, right? All right. Okay. So let's kickstart with a solution to that problem. So the thing is that I I keep telling us that once this task comes like this, right? We don't necessarily need to jump into solution, right? You don't need to you don't necessarily need to do what to jump into your VS Code and just start writing out this solution, right? I don't expect you guys to do that, right? I don't expect you guys to do that, given the fact that most of us are coming into programming newly, except you've been in this space for a long time, then starting out tax shouldn't really be a problem. But even with that, I always recommend that in all we do what we do algorithm for each task. This thing can save us, can take us a long way, right? This thing can take us a long way, right? Though it looks stressful, but trust me, if you can see the steps in solving the task without coding, just see the plain text in how this task should be solved, right? Then trust me, you've basically solved 50% of this project, right? And the remaining 50% is basically implementing that steps in actual coding. That's basically my advice to you guys. And I would do this, right? I would just follow these same steps, this algorithm method, and then write out the algorithms, and then try to do what? To implement them in actual coding, right? Try to implement them in actual coding. All right. So how would we solve this task, or how would I solve this, or how would I in person solve this task? Because I thought of that solution to problems is not a fixed path. There's no straight route in solving problems, right? My method of how I solve this problem is basically how I view and think of that problem. Your own method of solving this problem is basically how you would view and do and think of solving this particular problem. So your method would likely differ from my own method, and that is the beauty of programming. No one has to copy someone's code, right? Even if you have to copy it, right? There will always be what modification to what to fit how you do what how you view that particular task. Okay, so how would I do this? So first of all, the problem says that the scenario here is to collect and evaluate grade for multiple students, right? But then the question dived deep and said that basically that we should ask how many students that we need to do a process, which simply means that before the program even starts, that we have to know how many students are we processing for, right? So if I'm processing for 10 students, then as such, my production should be able to cater for what, for not more than 10 students or not less than what, 10 students. That's one point there. And then basically for each student, what am I doing? I'm basically going to collect their names as and what and their scores for 3 subjects. So each student is coming with name and 3 subjects, name and 3 scores for what, for 3 subjects, name 3 scores for 3 subjects, and so on and so forth. And then and then after doing that, I simply convert all these scores to float. And then at the end of it, I'll calculate the average of that score. And then if this average is above 80, then that student should be counted among those students that have excellence. And if they fall between 50 and 79, they should be counted among those that have passed. And if they are below 50, they should be counted among those that have failed. That was basically what that task said that we should do. So let's put down these steps and let's see how it goes. All right. So the first step is the first step of what I will do is I'll basically ask whoever wants to use this system, and ask them for how many students will be processed. Right? I think yes, yeah, okay. Basically this instruction can actually serve as what, as an algorithm. So we will basically use that instruction as algorithm, right? So we would even, so this is our first step, and then this is the following step, and all these steps we should live within a loop. So I even went ahead as making sure that I explicitly listed out the instruction that is meant to be in a loop, right? So I did that. I did that out here for us. So let's see how that goes. Let's following that instruction. Let's see how we can put this into actual Python programming. Let's see how we can do that into actual Python. All right. So let's start. So the first thing is what I'll ask number of students, right? Number of students, and then this will be a variable. Sorry, there should be an underscore here. Number of students, and then in number of students, I am expecting what, of course, number should be in integer, right? So I will typecast this as int, and then wrap it in my input, and then within this I can put my quote, and here to say how many students um, is to be processed, right? Is to be processed. You want, okay? And I've done what, and I've begin to solve what the first step of that problem. And then after that, of course, they said that what I should put what this particular these other instructions here in what, in a loop, right? In a loop. But then we have 2 kinds of loop in Python. We have the while loop and we have the for loop, right? But then, and the while loop is used to do what, to repeat things that we don't really know for how long we have to do what, repeat that things, because what a while loop is, what is a conditional based loop. So it means that what, a condition can be true from now to the end of time. We can never really tell, right? But then this particular question said about that we should ask what the number of students that needs to be processed. So it basically means that our loop needs to repeat based on a number of students that is specified here. Are we together? So now what do? I simply construct my for loop and then fix in that number, and then use that number to do what, to create structure that contains a number of items that fits the number of students that needs to be processed. Remember, for the works with structures. So it repeats things based on the number of items in a structure. So now what do? I have to take this number of students and create a structure that this loop can do can repeat based on the number of items in that particular structure. So now what do? I can simply say for I in range, right? And then in here, I can use the range function, right? Which is a built-in Python function to create a structure that should contain what, a specific number of items that should match what the number of students that needs to be processed. So in that case, I simply do take this man and put it here. So here I'm simply saying create a loop structure where I need to repeat things based on a number of items that we have in this range structure. And this range structure is how does range structure work? Range structure is a built-in function in Python, right? That takes in numbers and then does what create a kind of structure and for what it creates a kind of structure and then input elements that matches the number of that matches the number that we specify in this structure. So it means that if I should put in something like 3 here, I simply mean what create a structure that contains 3 elements, right? Which in this case is what 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2. So basically in this structure, what we basically have what 3 elements, which means that this what we will repeat for 3 times because we have 3 elements in that particular structure. That's basically how range function works, and which we talked about in our previous classes, in one of our previous classes. So now basically this what I'm doing here, all right, this instruction here, right, simply means that we should create a structure too. But then the number of elements in that structure is what is depending on on a number of students. So it means that if a user should come here and type in, let's say 2. So it basically means that here should be 2. Meaning that this structure is now 0, 1. But if a student should now come here and choose like 10, it means that this structure here should be 10, which means that the elements within this structure is 0 all the way to 9, which makes it 10 elements in that structure. Meaning that Python will repeat a specific instruction 10 times. Do we have question? Do you understand up to that point? Question, do you understand up to that point? All right, so the host, okay, sorry, the silence means that we understand up to that point. All right, so let's proceed with our code. Let's proceed with our solution. All right, let's proceed with our solution. All right, so having that in mind, let's go back and let's continue. Okay, so I put in a column there, and then in this column, remember this is how our for loop is structured, right? So now within these loops, these are the instructions that we need to do to carry out. So first of all, we need to ask for student's name alongside with 3 subjects. And how do we do this? We do we have to do bring in the input function again. So here I will collect student's name. So student underscore name, and in this case I will say input, and then here I will say enter a student's name. A student's name. Enter a student's name. And then in here, I will collect the scores for each student, right? I'll collect the scores for each student. I'll collect the scores for each student. So at this point where we did this task, we've not actually covered try and accept. So we did this task with what we've learned so far, which was conditionals and loops. Yes, I think this task came in after loops and conditionals. So basically, we will not go outside this. We will not go outside this particular concept there, right? We will not go outside that particular concept there, right? So, and now what do we need to do again? We have to collect the student scores for 3 subjects. So I'll call this score 1. Score 1 here will signify what? Which signify student scores for each of the subjects. So I would come here and then I will repeat the same thing and paste it. And then here I will say enter score for subject 1. Score for subject 1. Please start with the complaint that is this. So here I will collect score for subject 1, and I will collect for subject 2 and subject 3. 2 and then 3 here. And then I'll call this score 2 as well and score 3 as well. All right? So we are getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. All right. So now we have to do what? Now we have to do what? Convert the score to float and calculate the average, right? So now how do we do this? How do we actually do this? All right. So someone can please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, sir. So I have a sorry, sir. So I have a question actually. It's
Okay.
based on the beginning time of the class when you say that we should write down the steps on how to solve the problems, then we should solve it. So the question comes in that when the task is given, it has steps that are being followed. So how do we now go about that task steps and us writing the algorithm to solve that problem that we understand, the way we understand? How do you go about it, sir? Thank you.
All right. So if I understood your question clearly, right? I think the question says if a task is given, how do we now read the task and then go ahead to write the algorithm and then proceed to writing the actual code for that algorithm? I believe that's the question, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the thing is that in order for you to write algorithm, okay, you, you need to understand the task, right? So understanding of that task comes first. So the thing is that it's impossible. Okay, let me not say it's impossible. It's difficult, right, to write algorithm if you don't understand the task. Right. So now let's assume that that let's assume that we have let's look at a very basic task, right? Let's say a task that simply calculates area of a triangle. Right? Let's look at this task called area of a triangle. It's a very simple task, right? Area of a triangle. Now the thing is that if you don't even understand how area of a triangle works, you can't even write the algorithm of solving that task. Is that true? If you don't even understand how area of a triangle works, right? It's difficult to do what to understand how to write the algorithm for that problem, right? So first of all, you need to understand how does area of a triangle work, or how is or what is area of a triangle. Let's not really how, but what is. So here is the what. So what is the task saying? So this is where you ask basically all your what question, right? What is the task saying, or what needs to be done, and so on and so forth. And then here is more like the how, but then this how is in what is in plain English. How do we go about solving? Now that I know what this task is doing, or what this task is supposed to do, how do I now do? How do I now go ahead and put this thing in plain English? So like I said before, algorithm is what is basically plain English. So I can now simply come here and then after I have done after I have understood this task, so I can simply come here and write in plain English, right? You don't necessarily need to submit this algorithm. This algorithm can be written in pen and paper. So you can actually do this thing in pen and paper. Take pen with paper rather. Okay. So now how do we do that? You simply just go and then just write it in plain English, the way you understand it, the way that if you read it, it makes sense to you. Right. So this particular part is has nothing to do with your tax submission. You write it in the way you understand it. If you read it, it makes sense. So in this case, I understand this tax. I understand how or what is what area of a triangle. Now how do I solve it? Now because I understand what area of a triangle is, I know that what that area of a triangle is what is half breadth times height. So half breadth times height, right? Because I understand the tax, right? Because I understand that tax, I understand that this is how area of or shall I say, this is what area of a triangle does what means. Half breadth times tax height. For someone who does not actually understand how this thing works, it's difficult to do what to go ahead and write this ministry called algorithm, right? It's difficult. So remember, please, understanding comes first. So now after understanding, I can now simply do, well, okay, fine. Now that I know that's how breadth times height is area of a triangle, how do I now implement this, or how do I now solve this for the client, right? Or for the end users. So in order for end users to use this system and solve the area of a triangle, which is what half breadth times height, I need to do what collect the end users, their value of breadth and the value of what of height. So now what do? I can simply go back to writing that step. So first of all, I will collect value for height, right? After that, I'll do what? I'll collect the value for, so the same thing, I'll collect a value for their breadth, right? And then after that, I can do what, since I now have this value of height and breadth, I can replace it with them, right? And carry out what area of the triangle is, right? So in that case, I'll do what? I'll carry out the calculation, carry out the calculation. After that, then I'll do what? I would show the result of the calculation to the client, to the end user rather, to the end user. This is the steps, the English steps of what of solving this man. But you can only come up with these steps. Sorry, you can only come up with these steps, right? If you understand what this man is, what this man is. And then from there, it's quite easy to tell that what that this particular step does what it requires an input function. This man too requires an input function. This man too requires what? Maybe this one is here is what is our where we use our operators, our arithmetic operators to carry out to carry out the calculation, right? And this is where what this is where our print statements come in. With that, you've solved 50% of the problem. And if this was meant for what, for repeated user, we know how loop works. That what loops does what, loops basically does what, repeat instructions. So it basically means that what, that if this was for multiple users, then I do what, I'll put my loop there. So depending on either where loop, right? And then all these things should do what, should stay inside this man. So at this point, I will simply just say, so if this was for repeated users, then at that point, I will simply say repeat again. And how do I repeat? That is where, and this will be like my final step. How do I repeat the whole step? Repeat the all over again, all over again. How do I repeat all over? To carry everything and insert in a loop. So it means carry all these things and do and put in a loop. Do you understand? That is basically how you can know how you can transition from what, from understanding these tasks to algorithm to what, to implement to actual coding. So your actual coding comes in, right? So most of us, we just try to do a code. We don't even understand the tasks, and because we don't understand the tasks, we find it hard to do what, to see the detailed steps of solving that task. So we end up writing code that is either not solving the problem or end us end up stressing us out a lot, because most of these tasks, trust me, I don't give you this task to stress you guys a lot. I try as much as possible to make sure that every task that comes doesn't overstress us too much, right? Because I get the fact that most of us are also involved in other activities. So I try to as much as I can make sure that this task is what is coincide and straight to the point. Do you understand? Question. Question. Do you understand this whole process of understanding the algorithm to actual coding? All right. So the sentence means that we understand. So that is how you would do what, Google about solving your task, and that process still works with this same parallel, right? So you can actually come up and know what, and write your own algorithm that you see fit, because the thing that algorithm actually differs, right? How you view it is how you write it, right? How you view it is how you actually write it. All right. So let's continue. Let's continue. All right. So let's go back and let's resolve this problem. Okay. So I think someone asked a question again on the group. So someone asked, why not use loop to get the three at once? Okay. So someone asked, why not use loop to collect these scores at once? Well, we can. But if you remember, I told us before that if possible, if it's possible that you guys can avoid too much loops, please avoid too much loop. You can actually loop in between these things and then just use one simple input and then maybe we will try both ways, right? Whichever one is convenient for us, then we can do it. We can try both ways, right? We can try both ways. Of course, we can still use loop. I remember I said about that the method of how I will solve mine, of course, should always be different from how you will solve yours, right? For me, I see this part as appropriate for me. Yours can be to put this man in loop, and uh, both of them still work as expected, right? Both of them still work as expected. So maybe we will solve the task in two ways. So here you can come back and put in loop there, right? If need be. So Mr. Joshua, your hand is up. You have a question?
Okay, sir. So, sorry, based on the algorithm, so is it that because the tasks that are given, they normally have their small like bullet points that say do this, do that, do this, do that. So because I normally approach the questions is that I will follow those bullet points. So is it okay? Is it the right way thing to do? Is it for us to first of all see those bullet points, then write our algorithm relating to those points, then solve it?
All right. Okay. So what you would do, right? What you would do is that first of all, read the like read the whole text as 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 one comprehensive task that doesn't really require you to do. Okay, so okay, let me put. Okay, first of all, right? First of all, let me show you how you do that. First of all, what you will do is read the tax um, read the tax title. So in this case, this tax title here, what is student grade evaluator. Leave the point first, right? Leave the point. Leave this. Okay, read this tax title, please. Let's use the noise, please. Read this tax title, chief, chief. Read this tax title and then read the scenario. Right now, with the tax title and the scenario, leave the instructions. You come back to them. Now take this tax title and the scenario, put it somewhere, probably a new file. Put it in a file. Let's say I copy this man. I copy this man. Right? I copy this man and then come down here and then I paste it. Right? So the tag says student grade evaluator. So and then it says that what that we collect and evaluate grades for multiple students. Please shut the door, please. That will collect and evaluate grades for multiple students. Already, what is your head telling you, right? Once you read this task and the scenario, what is your mind telling you? Okay, see is how will you solve this task, right? What are the things that is required to do what to solve this task? Because if you understand the task, you understand what things is required to do what to solve that task and how you do it and how you will solve that task. Similar to let's take our mind back here. If you understand that what the area of the triangle is half breadth times height, it means that already I know what is required to do what to solve that task, which is what breadth times height. Same thing happens. Come here. It says what grade student grade evaluator. And then it says well, collect and evaluate grades for multiple students. Now, what is a grade evaluator? Basically means that that means that what I'll collect your grade and then I will evaluate if you passed or not in the very basic, right? In the very basic form. I've not gone back to check those bullet points. Basically, what I'm trying to understand that task title, what collect grade and know what and evaluate. So what is grade exactly? Grade is basically what grade can be A or B, right? A or A or B. So I think grade is mostly what A, comma B, comma C, comma D. But I believe that's basically what grading is, right? in school system, right? In school system, where is A, comma B, comma B, comma C, comma D. So basically, from this question, it says, well, grade evaluator. It means that somehow I need to collect this grade and do what and evaluate you. Evaluation can be based on so many things, right? Evaluation can be based on so many things, right? So probably I could probably for now I'll assume that if I get your grade, you can carry it, yeah, you can carry it. So basically, it means that for now, if I should collect your grade, what I basically do is to tell if you have passed or not. So I'll use passed or not. That's basically what I'll assume for now. And then I'll do this for what for multiple students. So already I can already tell that I will need grade. But in this case, I'm not too sure if I'm collecting the actual grade as A, B, C, or D, or probably as score, right? At the very basic, I don't really know. But what I mean is that I will collect grade, and then I will decide if you've passed or not, right? And then I'll decide if you've passed or you've not passed. For now, at the very basic, that is how I understand that question from the title and what and the scenario. And I will do this for what for multiple students. So it means that basically I will put this in a loop, while loop, because at that point, at this point, we are told what multiple students are not what are not a fixed number. So I will assume that this should be well. So it means that instead of my while loop, I'll collect your grade and then I'll check and then I'll do what I'll try to evaluate you. And that is at the basic understanding of what of the task itself and the scenario. That is the title and the scenario. Then if you've done this, then you can do what simply go back to do what to check, because this bullet point is for additional information about that task. So now if we now come back again, it says that what like okay, oh, there's someone that so if I come back now, I can say that what that this tax further said that what that I should collect the number of students. So at that point, I can now come back and now, okay, fine. I won't use while again, I'll use for because what because I do what I will need the number of students to do what to solve this task. So these are the things that I need to solve that particular task number of students, right? And then I'll use this number of students and do what and use my and do for loop there, right? I'll use number of students and do for loop there. All right. And then after that, I'll do what I'll collect your grade, and then I'll do what I'll decide if you passed or not passed at the basic grade evaluator understanding. But then if I go back again, it says what it says that what I should collect each student's name and what and scores. So it means that what that I won't be collecting the actual grade like A, B, C, but instead I'll be collecting score, right? Score. Basically what from 0 to 100, right? So that means I have to come back here and change this man from grade to what to score, right? But then the question further make it a little bit complicated. That I am collecting this score for 3 subjects. So since I'm collecting this score for 3 subjects, it means that at some point I should either use the sum of this score to tell if you passed or not, or at some point I should use the average of that score to tell if you passed or not, right? So I go back again and 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 do what and then check. All right, so I will do what I will check for what for average. So that means this evaluation is based on what on the average of 3 scores, right? It's based on the average of 3 scores. So now I'll now come back and do what? And know that okay, fine. I have to collect score 3 times. So collect score 3 times. So I'll have my score 1, score 2, and score 3, right? And then sum it up, and then divide it by 3. Of course, if that's how you do average, and then this result, I can do what I can use this result to do what to find the average and to determine use result to determine the evaluation. Yeah. All right. So please, do we understand? So it says that this order the refactoring of the algorithm is based on on continuous understanding of the equation. So what do? Take take the title and the scenario, understand it first. Then this other part is basically what the addition to what to solve that problem, right? So it doesn't necessarily need to mean that what it doesn't necessarily mean that your task need to solve this problem in this step. These steps here are like additional understanding to that problem, to the title and the scenario, right? So now that's basically what you would do. Yeah, do we understand? Question. Question. Please, the person that asked that question, is he on this call? Oh yes, he has Japan and Lagos. All right, so that's basically what you will do, right? So if you understand the title and the scenario, take it out, leave the rest, right? But think about it. How would you solve it without additional information, just by the title and the scenario? How would you solve it? If you can write it down, if you can write down with just the basic understanding of how you can solve it with just the title and the scenario, then you can now go back and do what and look at those points and do what and come back and refactor the algorithm. It will fit in. Trust me, those points are like additional information about the task. It doesn't mean that your task should be solved in that order, right? It's just an additional point. All right. So that is fantastic. Any other question before we proceed? Any other question before we proceed? Okay, Fidelis, your hand is up.
What if we are asked to, like, we are not given a certain number of subject scores? Like maybe they say we should write a code to, like, we are going to get the number of subject scores from the user input, maybe 10 or thereabout, just like the number of students also. It will be a multiple subject and multiple students. How are we going to go about?
Then in that case, then they do what you refactor your algorithm and your code. In that case, we can do what we can repeat the same thing, but what for number of courses, and that is where what that inner loop comes in. So where we can look and collect what for a number of courses. So maybe after we've solved the task, we can come back and look at it from this other scenario. Is that okay? Is that okay? All right. So for some reason, the person that asked the question is nowhere to be found. All right. So we would solve the question as it is, and maybe we can come back and consider other kinds of scenario for this particular question, right? So any other question outside that question that we've left pending? Any other question outside the question that we left pending? All right. The silence means there's no other question outside that question that we've left pending. All right. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. So let's proceed. So the next step is what is to calculate what the average of this, because the average of this course is what we will use and do what and evaluate a student based on 3 categories. Either you failed, you passed, or you are excellent in nature. All right. So how do we do this? We do what we simply say that average, right, should be equals to. So remember, scores have to come in as int. Scores have to come in as int. Right? Scores have to come in as int. Right? And int there. Come in here again as int again. Because we have to look, we are doing some mathematical operation on that value. So as such, we can't afford to have that value as a string. If not, it will concatenate. It will join. All right, so now what do? We can simply say average should be equals to what? In brackets, this is like a normal mathematical thing, right? This has nothing to do with programming. So if I say score, if I say score 1 plus score 2 plus score 3, right? And then I do what? I divide it by 3. And I want to simply wrap all this in float. Remember, there's a part that says that everything should be in float, that the scores, rather, maybe this, that the scores should be in float, I think. So either we can come here and wrap it one by one. So let me just come here, please. I prefer this to be in float. Okay, and then I'll divide by 3, and then I can carry out this evaluation. So the thing now is that if I can now say that, remember, you have to be in one category. Either you passed or you failed or you are excellent in nature. So if average is basically anything above 80, average is above or equals to 80, that is 80 inclusive, then I want to say that that you've passed. So I can print you've passed, you are excellent. Okay, excellent. All right, and then I would simply do for Elif average is Elif average is greater than or equals to, the other one there was between the range of 50 to 79 inclusive. So 50, 50 and average is less than or equals to 79. Then I want to tell you that you have passed. So I'll copy this man and paste it down here, and I say you have passed, right? And then I could now simply come here and say else, because else here caters for everything that is not that do not validate that conditions up there. Else it means that you failed. So I can say print you have failed. You have failed. All right. So we are almost done, but not necessarily what's done. So if we run our code, then our code should work as expected. So we'll run this, and then for the purpose of testing, I'll just put 2 students. I'll put 2 students, and then here I will say, it says how many students I need to process. So we have typo error there, which is here, if you could see. So here I will say 2 for the purpose of testing, and then I will say enter student name, and here I will say student 1, and then I would say, and then here I would say the score for subject 1, and then here I can put something like, let's say 50, and 60 for subject 2, and then 70 for subject 3. So here it says I've passed. Now, because now the reason why the reason why we are having we've passed is because if we add this thing together and divide it by 3, it will fall among this range of 50 to 79. So that's why we're having what that we've passed. But that wasn't really the question, though. The question was for us to show how many students passed and how many students failed and how many students got excellent. So that means we want to count how many students is there, how many students that have passed, how many students that have failed, and how many students that have excellent. So what I can do is I can also come up here outside our loop, and I can declare some variables, and these variables will be what I'll call the variables tracker. So this variable will keep track of people that have passed. So I would say people that have passed should be equal to what 0. All right. It means that before we even start, that everyone that have passed and have failed is what is 0. It means that no one failed and no one passed and no one had excellence. So I equate everything to 0. So, but then I want to automatically increment this value depending on where your average falls in, right? So if your average falls in among those that are above 80, then what? Then you have excellence. So in that case, I'll override the value of excellence here, and say excellence should be equals to excellence plus 1, right? So basically, I am adding 1 to excellence for each person that have passed, and then I'll do the same thing for those that have failed, or for those that have passed either. So here I'll duplicate this, and then this will be what passed. All right, and then the same thing here, I would duplicate this, and then here I would say failed, and then I would simply come here and I would say, so here I will now come here after the loop has finished, after we've processed all the students, right? Because remember, all these things happens inside a loop. After we process all the students, what we are going to do, I have to come outside this loop and do what, and show the number of people that have passed and the number of people that have failed. So I'll simply put in a print here, and I would say evaluation summary, right? Because that is where the actual thing lies. And I will show the total number of students that have failed. Same thing with the total number of students that have passed. So I'll come here and say print, and I will say the total number of students that have passed. And then I will come here and then I'll put the path variable there. So that will show what the total number of students that have passed. And I'll do the same thing for people that have excellence. And then I'll put excellent there. And then passed, and then failed. And then I'll come here and then I'll say failed. All right, so that is basically that for our tax. So we see we collect number of students. We basically do what we can add the whole evaluation in a loop. And then at the end of it all, we do what we showed the tracker value, basically the number of students that have passed, failed, or have excellence. So if I should run this again, and then this time around, I would maybe I would try for 5 students rather, and then I'll put the students 1. So the question did not really bother about which student has failed or which student have passed, right? It's basically how many students passed or failed. So we're not really interested in keeping track on where a particular student fall under, right? So we are only interested in how many passed and how many failed, and not who failed and who passed. It's two different things, please. Who failed and who passed is different from how many passed and how many failed. Please, two different things. All right. So for student 1, I'll have 10. I'll have 10. And it says, and then it moved for the next students. Okay, so let's make that reasonable. So I'll put an empty print here because it's kind of joining up everything. So at the end of it, or rather, so I will put empty prints there, and then I would say moving into the next student. I'll come here and then I'll say another print. This one is just for readability sake. It has nothing to do with your tax. So I'll come here. I'll say moving onto the next student. Moving onto the next student. Right. Basically, I want to do that down here, and then I'll put an empty print again. All right. So I want to put this part before the end of our loop. Right, before the end of our loop, I want to put that man there. Right, so let's run again. And we have 5 students to process. So I have student 1. And for student 1, I'll have 10 for the scores. And then it says moving on to the next student, and then it is more readable now, right? So and then I have student 2, and then 20, 20, 20. And then I'll have student 3. Then I have 30, 30, 30. And then I have student 4. And then I have 100, 100, 100. And then I have student 5. I'll have 50, 60, 55. And then it's that at the end of it all, we have the evaluation summary showing that 3 students failed, 1 student passed, and 1 student had excellence. Question, Mr. Barry, your hand is up.
Okay, sir. Isn't the code supposed to show that like after you're finished inputting the scores for one student, it's supposed to show like you have passed or you have failed before you move to the next student, stuff like that. Or
Well, that is optional. You can put it that you can put that in, but you see that the question was really instituted in the summary. But of course, you can still come here and add you've passed or you whatever you want. So you can come here and do that. That will work. So here I can say you have excellent, and I will do the same thing for the other ones, and you can have the same thing for the other ones. So here I can have and you have passed. And here I can say you have failed, right? Sorry. All right, but then please, this doesn't really answer the solve the this doesn't really solve the task, right? But then you can add it. Of course, you're free to add whatever you need to add to make your program reasonable, right? But then this here was the actual should I say the final result of what was expected. So you can add that. There's no problem. Have I answered the question?
yes, sir.
All right. Any other question? All right. So in the absence of any other question, we will do what we will proceed. Okay. All right. So this is like a method one of solving this man. So this is like a method one of solving this man. Of course, someone also said that if we can actually have this in a loop, yes, we can have that in a loop. We can have that in a loop. So being the fact that we can have that in a loop, okay? So what do I do? Maybe I can create a new file, right? Let me create a new file. So I will rename this. I'll create a new file here, and this file I will call it. I'll put here solution B. Right. So this is the second solution to what to the tax one. So not really there. I don't really want it. I want it to be somewhere closer to the other one. So I'll put the B after our question one. So underscore what B. All right. So that is so I will copy this man and just paste it there, and then we redo it in another way. All right. So I'll copy it and paste it here. All right. So because I want to put this in a loop, I can simply come here and maybe ask a user how many scores they are processing for. So I'll duplicate this. Right. Why is man not going up? All right. So I'll duplicate this and I'll call this number of courses. Right. And then I'll ask you how many courses do we want to courses is to be processed as well. So that will come in there. And then inside our loop, I'll do what I'll put in a for loop, right? For item for J rather. So this can be anything. So for J in range, so I use the range function again, and then I want to look for what? For the number of courses. So it means that for each time we collect a student's name, I want to do what? Do an inner loop for what? For number of courses, and then at the end of it all, I basically want to move this man. So I'll move this whole thing, and then I'll indent it. So this, I only want to carry out this operation inside here, right? Inside there. So now what do I want to do? Okay, sorry. Let's take this man. So basically, I want to move this man inside here. So because this course would be looked, right, based on the number of times that we've asked for it, I don't have to repeat the variables again. So I'll just use just one. So in this case, I will have just one score. We will come back and rectify these other ones down there. So here I would say after enter the inputs, enter a score for subject 1. But then we need to also change this man for subject 2, 3, and 4, and so on and so forth. Right? But if I should comment on this man out, for now, we'll come back and fix it. Right? We'll come back and fix it. If I should comment on this man out, and let's run this code, let's see what happens. if I should run this code, what happens is that we ask for number of students and number of courses. So if I should say 2 students and let's say 3 courses, so that means for each student I should collect 3 courses, right? So I will say student one, and then you see I'm asking what for score for subject 1. So if I should say 10, ask again for subject 1, another 10, and then another 10. So and then you see that it actually worked, but then we are basically repeating this thing, right? Because ideally that is what should happen. We are repeating this thing, right? Based on the number of times what that is specified here. So in that case, what do? I need to find a way of keeping track of the previous scores, because remember, if I'm repeating, I am overwriting that score. So it means at the end of it all, at the end of this loop, I will only be left with the last score, right? I will only be left with the last score. So now how do I keep track, or how do I save previous scores? So I can come back similar to what we did up there. I can come here and then I will have a variable called scores that will keep track of users' scores, right? So after collecting this score, I simply want to do what? Say let scores, right, be equals to scores plus new score. So I'll rename that man to new score, right? So it doesn't conflict. So it doesn't confuse us. So here I'll call this new score. So for each new score that we collect, I want to do what? Add that new score to the existing score. So that way we can do what? We can have the total of all the scores. So now what do? I can simply come here now and uncomment this man out, right? And then I don't need to carry out this calculation again, because already this man here is so already this what we are doing here, saying score 1 plus score 2 plus score 3, is similar to what we are doing here, because remember we are collecting the score and adding it to the previous score. So we don't even need to carry out this man again. So what I can do is basically just to remove this man here, and here will be what? A float of what we have of scores, right? And then we do what? We divide it by 3, and then we divide it by what? The number of courses, remember. So it's no longer fixed. So because that 3 can change from 2 to 1 to 5 to 10, right? So you divide it, excuse me, we divide it by number of courses, and that will give us the average. And then every other thing works, still remains as it is. Every other thing still remains as it is. All right, so let's go back and let's try. So let's say I have, but then one more thing, and before we go back and try. One more thing before we go back and try. So the thing is that we will always ask for subject 1. Remember, this is going to keep looped. So it will keep asking us for subject 1, and we don't want that we don't want that in a way. We don't really want that. So how can we solve this problem? Well, what we can do is if I should bring in J here, which may actually complicate things for us, but I'll tell us what it means. So I think we briefly talked about string formatting in our previous class, in one of our previous class, where we say we can insert a variable inside a string, right, by simply using f, and then in curly braces we do what? We pass that variable that we want to put there. So if I put J here, that should do what? Remember, each item of the structure is being assigned to a loop variable each time it loops. All right. So basically, I'll be asked enter a score for subject 0, subject 1, subject 2, and so on and so forth. That's basically what will happen there. Right. So if I should run this code now, that value should now be dynamic in a way. Should now be dynamic. So if I say I want to process 3 students, but I want to collect 5 courses, right? So let's see. It says enter a student student's name. So if I say student 1, it says well, enter score for subject 0. So in this case, if I should say 10, subject 1, 10, subject 2, 10, subject 3, 10, subject 4, 10, subject 5. Right. So okay. So sorry, that is 5 subjects, because what it's starting from 0 to 5 to 4, making what 5 subjects. So you see, what the subject now changes is no more 3, it's now 5, right? So now let's go for next student because we said that we want 3 students, but 5 subjects. So for 3 students, so for the second students, we now say students 2. So we collect for the next student. So in this case, I would say 10, I'll say 20, I'll say 30, I would say 40, I would say 50. Right now for the third students now, I would say 50, I would say 60. Oh, sorry, the student name should have been something, but it doesn't really matter. So I'll come here, I'll put 50 for the first subject, I'll put 60, I'll put 70, I'll put 80, and I'll put 90. So we have what we have excellent. So it still works as expected. So we have 3 students in total. 1 passed and 1 had excellent, 2 failed, right? But then we have 5 subjects, and it still works as expected, right? So this is another way I would have actually solved it, right? But then the task demanded for 3 subjects, so that was quite easy. But if the task asks that end user should provide a number of courses, then we have gone this other route. All right. Question. Are we even hearing me? All this well? Please, did we?
Yes, so we did here.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, question before we proceed to the next solution. Right, so don't worry if you don't cover everything in this class, we will cover them in period. Remember, I said that this week entirely is for solution, so not to worry. Yes, we definitely get to classes. It may likely not even be in this class because we have roughly about 40 minutes to go. Right. So it may be in the next class though. It will be in the next class. All right, Fidelis, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. So
Right,
what I want to ask, what if the subject we are supposed to, if we put the number of subjects, then
okay.
then we are not supposed to name them from the user input. It
All
will no
right.
longer come like subject, a score for subject 1, scores for subject 2. It's going to use the user input, like the user is going to input the names of the subjects like English, maths, and etc.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's factor that into our code. All right. So let's assume. So if I heard your question correctly, the question was, what if the user wanted to, what if the question said that the user should as well provide the subject name, right? How would we?
Yes.
All right. So we will let's factor that in. Don't worry. I'm with you guys on classes, right? No matter the question, we'll try and find solutions to our problems. All right, so let's factor collecting the subject names into the code. All right, so let's go back to our code. Let's refactor our code and let's fix that. All right, so let's assume that the question was collect subjects and then alongside with the score. So that means we have to come here to this loop, this particular loop that says number of courses, right? So this particular loop that loops the number of courses. What we will do is instead of saying enter score for subject this, so basically what we will do is I'll come here and say subject name, subject underscore name, and I'll be input, right? And I would say enter type, okay, enter the subject name. Okay, and here will be int the new score, right? In that case, I will say enter score 4, and then so the same thing. I'll just simply come here and then I'll replace J with subject name, right? I'll replace J with subject name. Oh, sorry. I'll replace J with what? With subject name. Okay. All right. So that is basically what we'll have to add to that code, and that will resolve it. So if you execute it now, we would say how many students is to be processed. I would say 2 students, but then I need for 3 subjects, right? So it says enter student name, I say student 1, and then enter subject name. If I say maths, it says enter the score for math. I can ask 50, and then enter subject name. I can say English. I says enter the score for English. I can say 70, and then subject name I can say French, and then score for French I will say maybe 90. And you see it works. Right? So that's basically what you would do to factor in subject name into that program. Okay. Any other question or any other scenario that you guys think is difficult that we can add to this task? You bring it on. Let's see how we can factor it in, so we can move to the next task. Question, scenario, question, scenario, question, scenario. All right. So the silence means no question, no other scenario in mind. Okay. So let's go back to what we have. Let's go back to what we have. So for our task 2, we have things that we had question that were tied, question 1, question 3, question 5. So what I will do is let's see by the special grace if we have the energy, we can solve all of them. Right? Those ones that is tied, which is question 1, 3, and 5. Right? Question 1, 3, and 5. Right. So let's see how you can solve question 1 of task 2. All right. So I will rename this. Rename. And I'll call this a solution to task 2 of question 1. Okay. So that is that. So let's get the question. Let's get the question for question 1 of task 2. All right. So I will go to here. So go back here. So I have some students that I can't access their folder. I have like 3 students right now that I can't access their folder. All right. Okay, question 2. Okay, I think question 2, question task 2, question 1. So that is loading on. That is coming up. So hold on, let that come up. Okay. So for task 2 as well, I have 3 students that I can't still access their task. So this one says. Task 1 says student management system. Student management system. So I'll paste student management system. All right. So real quick, I will scroll up. Right. Let us try and let us understand that task. The title of the task is what is student management system. How do we understand that task? Right. Without that point, right now, how do we try to understand that these task? Okay. It's not rejected. It's not rejected. It's not rejected. All right. I'll be with you. Okay. So, tax 2 says tax 2 question 1 says student management system. Right. So what? First of all, how do you understand management system? Well, for me, the way I understand management system is basically like a system that where people can do what, can add something, can either edit something, right? Can either get something, all right? Can either delete something. That's basically how I understand a management system. So now the management now depends on where are we now applying this management to. So in this case, is students. So invariably in my head, I know that students should be able that this program should do what should be able to do what ask students in these students details, probably fetch a student if need be, or maybe do what delete a student at the basic understanding of that data. That is how I understand this thing. And please, you guys can chill. Right. So at the basic understanding, without even going deep or without even going to look at those points to further understand this question, I already have it in my head that this man what is basically to do what, to add, to edit, to get, and to delete what students. That's basically what that step is. And then to further make things interesting for me, I want to think how will the students or possibly how will the students be added to this or should I say to what student details, what student details do I need to add to this system, right? Because the thing that once you know these things, what you need to solve it, it becomes easy. So now after understanding what system, so basically this understanding here, this first understanding there comes from the understanding of what a management system is, from what a management system is, right? That is what brought about the add, the edit, the get, and the delete. But then after now knowing what a management system is and where it's being applied and where it will be applied and where it will be applied, right? Which is where in a student environment, I can now further ask myself, okay, having known how the system behaves or operates, what are the details that I will need to use in order to be able to operate in this manner? So to add, because this system must add, what am I adding? Maybe I can add the student's name. Student name, right? I can add student's name. I can maybe also add student, it's mostly going to be student credentials. Mostly students' credentials. Mostly going to be what students' credentials. But at this point, I don't really know what the credentials are. But I know that what is mostly going to be what credentials, right? And then these credentials can include maybe the name, maybe a email. And I'm just guessing, but I'm not really sure because I've not further read that question. But from the title alone, I'm just trying to do what to see how I understand it. That's basically what I would do if so, and that's basically what you guys can also do as well. So maybe it can be name, email, and maybe a rec number if need be, rec number, right? It could be okay, and then I can either edit any of these things. I can either edit any of these things. So I can either edit any of these things. I can as well delete. I can as well get. So now let's see how if I was to get a student, how will I get a student? Assuming. Remember, I'm trying to do what understand and see the possible ways of solving with the available information I have in my head, right? Or with the available information I understand that question. So now, how do I get a student? So the best way of getting a student could be with I can get with the student ID, right? So at this point, we've covered data structure. Data structure. At this point, we've covered the data structure, right? Exactly. We've covered data structure. So I have data structure. I have the data structure in mind. So now, if I have to add a student, how would I add a student so that it will be convenient for me to do what to be able to retrieve that student alongside with their details. So being that I've covered data structure and I'm aware that that we have list, I have dictionary, I have tuple, I have set, but right. So now among these four data structure, I will ask myself, how will I be able to do what to implement the adding, the editing, the getting, and deleting in a simplest way using this structure in a most convenient, which structure is most convenient for me, all right? What I was personally, I'm seeing what I'm seeing dictionary because what every student that I will add and will come and what they will come with their name, their email, and their rec number. So it doesn't really make sense to add these things in a list because if I have a list now, let's say I have a list of students, I say I'll call this L, and then I'm still assuming, right? Because I'm not seeing the further the rest of the question, so I'm still working with assumption. So assuming that each student that I need to add will give me what name and email and rec number. So that means I'll put the first student's name, name 1, email 1. Email, and rec number 1. So rec number 1. Now, if I want to add another student again, same thing again, name 1 and name 2, email 2, email 3. Already it's not making sense for me, right? Already this thing here is not making sense for me? What if I need to get the details of one student? So it means that how would I now fetch all these details for what, for student one? Right? So it's difficult already. So from look of things, I'm already saying that list is not even fit into this problem. So let's look at a dictionary. Assuming I have a dictionary called D, and then in this dictionary, right, I can have okay, I can also have nesting. So even if I should have nesting, right? Well, I can have nesting, which actually makes sense, right? Where I can say, okay, fine. Maybe I can group each this thing that belongs to what happened. Maybe I can group each this thing that belongs to each student. Maybe I can do like this, where this becomes what, this becomes a single item. I mean, for what, for a specific student. So that means if I want the details for student one, I'll just fetch this man, and this man will come out like this, right? And where we can do that, we can do this. We can, of course, this will do what, this will work. Where I can group each details in a list, right? And this will work. So I can use this, right? But I'm also seeing another possibility where I can also do this, because right now, if I should fetch a student, right? If I should fetch a particular student, and then I try to get their name, email, it's way too, it's, I have to remember how I arrange these things, where name is placed, where email is placed, where break number is placed. So indexing is not really comfortable with me, right? But it may be comfortable with some other person, right? But for me, I'm not really feeling it. Remember, this thing is developer's choice, so I'm not really feeling it. But what I can do instead, I can simply just, probably I can go with nested dictionary. The dictionary works best in this case for me, where I can have the key as the rec number, where the rec number can be the key, and then I can have what, the values here, where the email, where email can now stand for what, for email one, comma, and rec number, rec number, rec can now be what, rec number one. So this key here would be, no, sorry, not rec number, name here can now be what, can now be name one, and here will be rec number one. So basically, I'll have the same thing again for the next man. So I'll copy, comma, and then paste it. And here will be what, my rec number two, and here will be what, here will be my email two, and here will be email and name two. So with this, I'm already seeing that it is convenient to do what, to fit the detail of each item by rec number, right? So I think dictionary for me works best compared to this man, where I basically have to go and, because if I want to filter, let's say, the email, I mean that I have to do what, to somehow know where that email stays. Okay, because how do I put it so that it makes sense for us to see that working with this other structure is difficult than working with this other one. Let's assume I want to get a user whose email is what, is email one. Remember, if I should go ahead and say if I should say print L, and then I get the first number, right? I've not still determined if that element is what, is the email with that man, right? So it's difficult to fetch, because I still have to do what, somehow dive deep again to do what, to now go and fetch the email, which is one, and then see if it's the same. So it's way too difficult with list, way too complicated. So I will not even bring in list as an option, right? But then it can still be work with this. Maybe we can do what, maybe we can create another file where we work this thing with list and see how it will look like, right? We can do that. It will work. So, but for now, I will not consider list as the viable option. All right. So far, I'm already seeing my solution so far, because I understand what that question is, right? And then how I will do what we were getting it. Now let's go back and read that question for further understanding. Do we have questions so far with this assumption that we've done so far? Do we have this one? All right. So please, sorry for that break in communication. Sorry for that break in communication. All right. So question pertaining to what we've done so far with our assumptions before we can go back and see what the details of that question. Okay, Mr. Barry, your hand is up. Please unmute and ask.
Okay, sir. I thought it's only like only two elements that can live inside a dictionary, like
I'm hearing you
you do
slowly
that
now.
word. Yeah?
I can't really hear you clearly. What are you saying?
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Okay. Because I ask the question.
I said I thought it's only like two elements that can stay inside a dictionary, like word and email. So like I'm seeing three, whether it's email and name. That's what I'm confused.
All right, so I have to strain my ear to hear you properly. Like, I have to go, like, I have to basically put my ear in my person to hear you properly. But upon that, I cannot really hear you clearly. I cannot really hear you clearly. But let me try and see if I can interpret that question that you just
Can
asked.
you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I think that is better.
Okay, I said I was thinking it's only like two elements that was in a dictionary. So like, but now I'm seeing rec, email, and name. So
Okay. All right, so let me dissect that dictionary properly. Yes, every item in a dictionary comes in pairs, right? Every dictionary item comes in key and what and pair, key and value, right? That's how every item in what a dictionary should look like, key and value. So now, if you look at our dictionary that we have here, if you look at probably is how I arranged it. Let me All right, so sorry about that. Network kicks me out. So let's continue. Let's continue. All right, so if you look at what we have here, it's we have what. All right, so please sorry about that. I don't know for some reason I keep losing connection. Keep losing connection. All right. So I was trying to explain to Mr. Barry that yes, that every variable, every value of a dictionary comes in pairs. Right. Every value of dictionary comes in pairs, and that's basically what is happening. Right. That's basically what is happening. So you can say that this is the value. These are the values, right, for this dictionary outside here, right? So where this is the key and this is the value. Remember that this value can be of any type. So in this case, the value here is what is a dictionary. Same thing happens there. So this is the key and this is the value. Making this man a single value for this dictionary D. This is what another key and this is another value, which in this case what is a dictionary. Making a second value for the dictionary D. But because this value is also a dictionary, so as such, that principle still holds. So it means that the content of it too is also what key and key and value, key and value, key and value, key and value, making what a single value for what for this other for the other dictionary being having what key and value for what for this other dictionary. Does that make sense, Mr. Barry?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, or yes, sir? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So Mr. Barry said that
We
makes a lot of
don't-
sense. All right, so let's go back and let's read more on our question, and let's come back and let's refactor what we've understood so far. All right. So the factor says that we should add new student with 3 subjects. So already I've seen that it somehow matches what we've already understood. Right. So come back again and say that we are not adding email and reg number, but instead we are adding the name alongside one with 3 scores. So those are the credentials. So name and then score 1, and then score 2, and then score 3. So that is what we are adding, name and the score. And then we can as well show all students with the average and with their average and performance status. Right? We can show, so that means we have gates. Remember, management system it's basically about what add, edit, get, and delete. So that here is more like get. Here is more like get. So that means we are getting student by what? By name. So when show us, okay, here you're saying show all students. So at this point, we have like 2 kind of gets, right? Where we can have the first get here is what is showing all students with with all students with their average, basically what the sum of their 3 scores, right? That's what average is. Average and then their status. So in this case, the status here can be if you have passed, if you have failed, right? So let's just stick to that. Pass and fail. Pass and fail. So the average and status, right? So most times we need to also make things to make sense. Most times we need to also add information to make things make sense to us. In this case, the status is either what pass or fail. Right? So you will pass if your average is above 50. So here I would say if your average is above 50, you will pass. If it's below, of course you failed. Right? So I think we have and then next thing is the search for students by name. So we have another get by student name. So basically, if I should call your name, if I should fetch your name, I should be able to do what? I should be able to see your details, right? As such as what your scores for each of the for three subjects, your scores for 3 subjects. So basically, and then maybe your average and then your status. That's basically what I will see if I should fetch this man. And then it says what it says, use function. So that means we at this point we've also covered function. So I'll bring in function there. And I think someone mic is on. Barry, please, your mic is on. And Fola Sade, please give me my host back. That's the reason why I cannot mute Barry. So please start processing how to return my host. All right, that's if she's still on this call or she just joined and left us. All right.
I'm here. I'm doing that
Okay.
already.
Okay. All right. So far, I think we've been able to do what to have a full understanding of the problem. So I think that method works, right? Get the topic, try to understand the topic on your own in your own way, and how you go about solving that task in your own way with the assumption that you've made so far, right? And then before you can further go into the what to get this other bullet point. This bullet point is what is additional information to the question, right? But if you understand the title as it is, then trust me, you can go far. Every management system is basically crude operation. Every management system is basically to add, to edit, to update, or to delete. Any of those functionalities is coming in there, right? So now here it says so that means that functionality, adding, editing, updating, and deleting is what is applicable to students. So at that point, at that point, at least you can have a better understanding of what is happening. Then maybe you can come back much later and look at this bullet point for further details of that question. So, but then if you try to solve your task point by point like this, trust me, you will get lost, because these points are not the order in which your project your project should be executed. They are basically additional information. It's not an order of how your project should be executed. Please note that. All right. Question pertaining to this little understanding before we proceed. Okay, Messi, your hand is up.
Yeah, you made mention of crude operation. What is that really?
Okay, crude
Can you
operation.
explain?
Okay, so it's basically what I just wrote down here. But don't worry, we will talk about crude in our subsequent classes. But basically, is an acronym that stands for create, which in this case is like add. It's like to add something, right? So creating, but basically that's what we basically do in crude operation. If you're not creating or adding, we are either doing what? We are either reading from it. So reading here is like get, right? Or if you're not reading, we are either updating, right? Updating, or we are either what? Deleting. That's basically what code is. So it's basically the same thing here. But this is what this is. All right, so please, I'm still with you guys. Okay, so let's continue. Let's continue. Sorry about that. Where I am, it's not really wonderful, but you work from there regardless. Okay, so crude is basically the same thing as what I've just wrote out there: to add, to edit, to get, and to delete. So that's basically what crude is: create, read, update, delete. So creating is similar to adding something to somewhere, right? Which in this case to add something to our dictionary. Editing is either changing the value in the existing dictionary, and then getting what is to fetch a value from a dictionary and then delete is to remove something from a dictionary. But in this case, when we talk about CRUD, it's mostly related to what to database, which is what we will do. It's part of it. It's part of what of back end development. So that is what CRUD is. Please, I believe that I've understood that question. So, Fidelis, your hand is up. Fidelis, your hand is up. Fidelis. Fidelis, is it with us?
So you said that all my questions today is coming from user input. How can we get this kind of arrangement now from user input?
Which kind of arrangement? This kind of this type?
Yes. Yes.
Of course, we will do it. That's what we're about doing, right? So basically, you will not go and tell user to type in this thing like this, please. You basically, you know what? You are the one that will collect the value of email and the value of name and the value of rec number and do what and structure it like this. This is your job. Your job of structuring this thing like this is your job, not the user job, please. The user's job is to only give you what the email, the name, and the rec number. It's now your job to do what to carry those three information and structure it in this manner. You understand? Do we understand? All right. So let's the silence means that we understand. So let's touch down. Let's do basic something, and then we will maybe and then we just wherever we stopped, we'll come back and we'll continue in our next class. All right. But then let's just start something in this particular task. Okay. So that is our and this is our kind of like our algorithm. So I'll comment it and I'll leave it there as it is. Maybe you can come back and reference it. All right, so let's start. So remember, I said that we should include functions for actions and functions for an error handling. So basically, the actions here are like actions of adding of students, showing of students with average and their performance, maybe searching as well. Those are like the major functions there, or the major action there. If there is need for any other additional actions, we will incorporate those functions as well. So let's start. So I will start with a very simple menu of either you are adding, or you are showing, or you are searching, right? So there should be like a menu kind of. So I'll come here and how do we create a function? And I can get a function with def keyword. Remember, and I'll call this menu, right? And this menu will take nothing. And basically, what this menu would do is to just print like an actual menu. I think we did something like that in our previous class. You can copy there and bring it down here and edit, so you don't have to waste time. So that's the point of okay. So I'll copy this man as it is and got edited in our task 2 question 1. So I'll paste. So here it says welcome. So here we don't want that kind of thing. And we're not welcoming you to anywhere. So here is more like welcome to students MGT system. So management system. So I'll put my tab. So you see. So the option here is either you can search. Yeah, we have search. Let's confirm. We have add students. So you can say add students. I'll correct that. So I'll bring this in. Add students. And we could say we could also have what again? Show all students. All students. Okay, show all students. Okay. View all students. So I'll delete and bring that in. And then the last part there is what? Last part there is fetch search for students. Search a student. Okay. I'll delete. I don't do an order. Yeah. All right. So okay, so that's basically that. So what is like our menu, and I would basically I think almost the same thing what we did. So that's the one thing about programming, and you can actually copy your previous stuff and just bring it in. So at this point we did try and accept, but we also did loop, right? So basically I can copy this man. We are solving our problem now. See, so that's that, and we are almost there. Right, so we are familiar with trying to accept because at this point we I said use what I use try and accept. So at that point we've covered try and accept. I said use error handling for input. At that point we've covered try and accept. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's go back and let's see if we can copy anything. If there's anything that we can copy from here. All right. So basically nothing again. I'll just come back and continue our code from here. All right. So let's run this and let's see what happens basically. All right. So I'll come here. I will invoke because if you don't invoke, nothing will happen. Right? Nothing will basically happen. So I'll invoke my menu and run this code. Okay. Okay, so I have welcome to student management system, choose menu, and then you can choose either one, or you can do anything. It will take you one back here. So our function is still wonderful. Say if I took 9, I should say 9. So I think we should also cover for that as well, but no problem. So basically we've covered that. And maybe at some point we should also see, that if option is also not 1, 2, or 3, then we should take it back again. I think, Abi, that's what we can do, right? So let's just come back and let's just see. Maybe we say if option is not in what 1, 2, 3. So we did data structure. So by now we are already familiar with list. So what happens? It checks if whatever is being typed, right? If it's actually a valid integer, right? It's a valid integer, right? And then that integer is not an element of this list. Then basically what I want to do, I want to just continue. Basically take you back again to where you can do what? To where you can retype another one, right? Maybe I can just show you. You enter. So maybe I'll do this. I'll copy this man and just paste it here. So here I'll tell you enter a valid option, not a number around. So option here, and then do what? Take you back for you to do what? Enter a valid option. All right, makes sense. Okay, someone hand is up. So
so that if option not in, you wrote 1,23.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That is fantastic. Yeah, please correct that. 1,2,3. All right. Someone hand is still up. Blessing, your hand is still up. Okay. That is a blessing. That is a blessing that just spoke. All right. Let's run the code and let's see. So I think we've resolved so many problems at this point. We've handled so many errors at this point. At this point, you can't even type anything outside. So even if it's a valid number, if you type something outside what is not there, so it takes us back. It says what enter a valid option. But then if you type something that's not actually a number, it says what enter a valid number. So it's working, right? It is working. We are heading somewhere. All right. So let's see again. What again do we need? We need a situation where if I should choose, if option is number 1, being what adding of students, then I should do what? I should be able to add students alongside with their scores. So now how do I do this? I can come back here. I can come here. I can have a student database. I'll call this student std DB database, and to be an empty dictionary, right? So basically, this way I want to be add or create what my student. I want to add it there, right? So how do I do this? I can simply come here. So if option 1, if option is valid, so at this point I can now simply come here, and so outside my loop, right? So once we resolve all those problems now, I can now come and then say that if option is equals to 1, which in this case is we want to do what add. So I'll pass for now. So let's go ahead and do what, let's create the function that adds. So this function, remember everything have to be in function. Every action needs to stay on its own function. So I'll call it add students. Add students function, right? And this function basically will take nothing. But then when we invoke this function, I want to collect student's name. So we copy. So we will likely be copying. So remember, is this one says collect the name, add the name alongside with 3 scores. So we had similar something. Before. So I'll just go and copy it. Name and 3 scores. Remember, we had name and 3 scores once. So I'll copy this man. I'll follow this method. I'll copy this man and go back to our code. So here I would say in my option, what is it? Okay, up here I'll say here I would say name and 3 scores. All right, so I'll collect the name, collect scores, collect score 1, collect score 2, collect score 3. All right, so in this case now, I will do what? I will simply add to my database. So now how do I add? So after collecting all these things, how do I add? I will simply say std db, and then the key here would be what would be the student name. So I'll be searching by student name. So remember, I want to come back here since where is our okay. So since we are not working with a real number, so the name here will now becomes our key. We replace name with key. So that means we can fetch by name or filter by name. So the name there will be key, and the value will be what? Another dictionary. So this is where I'll be the one to structure the dictionary. So the person that asks if the client have to insert that dictionary as it is. So this is where what you arrange your dictionary in a way that you can confidently do what work with it. So in this case, I'm saying let my key be student name, and then let the value now be what another dictionary, right? Whose scores would be whose scores. So who score 1? I'll have score 1. Who score 1 would be score 1 value, comma, and score 2 score 3. So my score 3 will come here, and score 3 will come here, and my score 2 will stay there. Score 3 here will also come here. But remember, at some point, so this should be score 3. So remember what that I also need to get that there is a point where students' average should also be seen. So I don't want to scatter this operation up and down. So what I can do is I can simply just put that at once. So I'll put the average and the performance at once. So I'll come here and then I'll have average, and the average here will basically be the average of what? The average of I'll simply say score in bracket score 1 plus score 2 plus score 3, and then I'll divide it by 3. So that would be my average, and the status would be here would now be okay. So basically, so let me do this outside. So I'll say average is what? I'll do this outside. Average would be this man. So I'll copy this man and just put it outside there. And this man here would in turn come here, right? Okay, and then the status here will now come in. So I will now say if average is greater than or equals to 50, right? Then in that case, I would say your status is pass. Is pass. Okay, so let me put this as pass. All right, but before here, I would say I'll have status. It should be equals to what? Should be equals to none. So at this point, there's no value for status. But after we've finished, I can simply do what? I can simply just override this man and say status should be equals to pass only if average is that, and then elif, and then else status should be equals to what? To fail. All right, and then I'll simply come here and I will add my status equals to what? Status. All right, and that is that. That is basically that. That is basically that. So now what do I do? So now what do I now do now? So if my option 1 is 1, I'll do what? I will simply come here and I'll invoke. I will do what? I will call my function add students here and paste it there, and that will do what? That will solve the problem. So let's test that out. Let's test that out for option 1. Let's test that out. All right. So if I remember, everything still works. Every other thing still works. Fantastic. So let's put in 1 as adding students. So what do we have? We have add student name. So if I should say student 1, students. So probably let me just print this man. Probably let me just print this man at the end of it all. Print SDDB, right? So let's see how it looks like once it's being created. So I run again, and then come back. I put 1. So I put student name as student 1, right? And then subjects for score 1. I'll have my 50. I have 70. I have 90. So this is basically how it looks like when it's being added. So I can see my score 1, my score 2, my score 3, and this is the average, and this is the status of pass, because the average here is above 50. So with that, I have done what I have finished adding with the adding of students functionality. Any question pertaining to that? Because that is where we will stop for this particular task. When we come in next class, if possible, we may actually have additional class if possible, if we can wrap up everything in 1 week, so that I don't end up rushing us, because if I end up rushing us, then the whole point of the revision is nowhere to be found, because we end up not getting the point. So the whole point is to make sure that that the revision comes with proper understanding, right? So even if we can't finish in 2 classes, then I can call for a test session within the week, right? I can call for a test session within the week. All right, so question pertaining to what we've done so far. Question. Question. All right, so it means that we are understanding what I've done so far. No problem with that. So we'll end there for today's class, and then when we come back tomorrow, sorry, not really tomorrow, but if there is need for us to schedule a session, I'll let us know. But whenever we meet again, we pick it up and we continue from here. All right. So in the absence of any other question, we'll end there for today's class. See you guys in our next session. Bye.